I did find it a little bit slow at times, but then
I really tried, but I couldn't finish it.
It is casually racist and casually misogynistic.
The Cuckoo's Nest is very caricaturist and extremely sexist.
Some aspects of it are aged. I don't know how many times the book says black boys.
This book is making me go cuckoo. In the society that we live in, some voices will be louder than others. Some voices will simply be heard by those around them, or on TikTok or Reddit. Others, though, will be amplified for decades, long after they've even spoke. Ken Casey's voice is a prime example of this. I have read his book, my mother has read his book, my children will probably read his book. And I have a big problem with that. Because the real issue of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest does not lie in lackluster pacing or underdeveloped characters. The real problem is the already prominent and redundant views it enforces time and time again. In Ken Casey's creation, it seems as though women are only allowed to be two things, a whore or unlikable. The only women we see with any sort of role in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest is Candy and Nurse Ratched. So let's start with Candy. Two whores on their way down from Portland to take us deep-sea fishing in a boat. Page 225. This to me represents the worst part of Candy's character, because this line is all she is reduced to. The only aspect of Candy there is the fact that everybody wants to f*** her. I'm entirely serious, by the way. At one point in the story, all the older men are just staring at her, a potentially 17-year-old. She must have been seen with lots less by lots more men. However, under the circumstances, she began to fidget self-consciously, like a schoolgirl on a stage. Nobody spoke while they looked. Oh, and believe me, that is not the only thing. You could read off the dates of the coins in her pockets, they were so tight. Couldn't Blondie handle the lot of you? You could see how it bothered the girl. Those men against the shop kept leering at her and leaning close to her to whisper, "Hey you, Blondie. Hey you, Blondie. Hey you, Blondie." She lifted her head and gave us a look that asked why we weren't saying something to defend her. No one ever defends her, because Candy is just like every other woman in the 60s. She's not allowed to be anything except for what men want her to be. To be honest, reading those passages of the book is what bothered me the most, because Ken Casey starts to talk about Candy's vulnerability and self-consciousness. However, this is never brought up again. No one ever standing up for her, never brought up again. People catcalling her, never brought up again. In fact, when she comes back for the final part of the book, she is once again reduced to nothing, just Billy's side piece to help further the plot. Now, I understand Candy is not a main character in this book. However, that doesn't mean she can't have any character at all or get the little character she has taken away before it can even develop. Because we see other side characters get incredible and interesting backstories like Billy Bibbit, Harding, or Cheswick. It is so incredibly clear to me that Ken Casey did not care about sending any sort of message because these uncomfortable conversations are mentioned once and are immediately thrown away for the big finale. Candy is one-dimensional because that is all she is ever allowed to be. Nurse Ratched throughout One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest is consistently sexualized over and over again. Seriously, when Ken Casey wrote this character, it seems as though he wanted her main trait to be her big boobs. Ratched is mainly sexualized by the patients we see in the ward, examples of this being, a mistake was made somehow in manufacturing, putting those big, womanly breasts in what would have otherwise been a perfect work. They all knuckle under to that smiling, flower-faced old mother there. It's the two red lipstick and the two big boobs. She's got one hell of a set of shababs is all he can think, big as old lady Ratched's. He grabbed for her and ripped her uniform all the way down the front, screaming again when the two nipples started from her chest and swelled out and out, bigger than anyone had ever imagined, warm and pink in the light. Notice how it is mainly McMurphy and Brompton doing all the sexualizing. This leads into the second issue I have with Nurse Ratched's character, and that is how Nurse Ratched is painted as the big bad, the ultimate villain, the one to beat. And she is definitely awful, don't get me wrong. However, McMurphy is not exactly a saint either, and yet he's painted as some sort of hero. I mean, it is literally on the back of the book. In this book, we are conditioned to root for McMurphy. We are supposed to want him to get his freedom, but I just have to wonder why Ken Casey is making me root for a rapist.
Of course, it's true that you went in for statutory rape. That's true, is it not, this time?
Absolutely true. But, Doc, she was 15 years old, going on 35, Doc, and she told me she was 18, and she was very willing, you know what I mean?
She was 15. She was a child, but so what? Why does this matter? I mean, this book was written in the 60s after all. Shouldn't we expect these views? Shouldn't we just ignore them in favor of appreciating this art for what it is? No! Ken Casey has a powerful voice. One that has been heard in film, literature, theater, and once upon a time. His voice will be amplified. These views, sexualizations, and stereotypes of women will be amplified. Imagine if he showed female characters that could be more than just one-dimensional. The impact these characters could have had. Because we have seen the impact strong female characters can have on our society, on stereotypes. An example that comes to mind to me is of course Legally Blonde. Legally Blonde forever influenced and broke down many stereotypes and notions women face. The film's voice and message was destined to be heard with stars such as Reese Witherspoon and Jennifer Coolidge. So director Robert Leipzig made sure the story of Legally Blonde was one that would break molds and inspire change. While the story of Elle Woods may start as a simple woman going to law school to win back her man, it becomes so much more than that. The story turns into one about not letting outside perception stop you, breaking stereotypes, and a woman learning who she is without the male gaze. Legally Blonde shows women can be strong female leaders who are not bossy or manipulative. Elle Woods' leadership is so incredibly interesting to me because she does not hide her beauty or features in order to be taken seriously. She proves her worth with her intelligence and wits. And if people are only there for her attractiveness, she makes sure to prove she is more than just a dumb blonde. This is in quite contrast to Ken Casey's work, where he enforces women either have to hide their features to have a leadership role, or they can just be whores. Elle Woods has an inspiring journey. She embraces her womanhood and is not ashamed to be a woman. Legally Blonde will be remembered forever. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest will be remembered forever. Both have multimedia influences and will last for generations. However, one of these medias enforces the molds that women try to break time and time again, while the other works to break these molds, does not enforce other types of molds, and creates a message that inspires a change. In fact, I would argue that Legally Blonde has had just as much an impact on our culture as Ken Casey's book, while still having that positive voice.
Beverly Hills Courthouse, where he met one woman who decided to go to law school after being inspired by the film.
Legally Blonde emerges an empowering feminist film that embraces femininity, challenges gender-based societal expectations, and subverts anti-feminist movie tropes.
One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest was not written to stand up for feminism, and I'm not saying it had to be. The messages of this book regarding mental health are truly important and need to be heard, just as much as feminist conversations. However, that does not change the fact that One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest has a strong voice, just as strong as Legally Blonde. However, when the book dives into topics of misogyny or racism, it uses its voice to wrongly stereotype and hurt the very people who are and will read it. Nurse Ratched does not have to be Elle Woods. She is evil, a manipulator, a brilliant mastermind. However, there also doesn't need to be constant mentions of her big boobs. It's all about finding that balance, characterizing her characters of all shapes and sizes in many different ways, while also not playing into and enforcing harmful views. Ken Casey is a great writer with such an impactful voice. However, the way he uses his voice is not one I can support. Which is why One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest was and always will be poor use of a strong voice.